Hello there and welcome to the video. We are going to look at a checkmate pattern. It's been a while since we did a checkmate pattern. We've done a bunch of tactical patterns and strategical patterns, but it's been a while since we've done a checkmate pattern. First of all, well, apologies or not, I couldn't really keep up with the World Championship match. I wanted to do a review after every game, but well, let's just call it a series of unfortunate events prevented me from doing that. So we'll just get back to instructional material and have a look at a checkmate pattern. So this one, well, struggling to find a name, but let's just call it what it is: a deadly bishop on rook file discovery. And usually we see a situation like this, where we have a rook on the h file and a little bit of a boxed in king, and this bishop, instead of going back, it has to go forward. It has to go to f8, and that's to keep an eye on the g7 square, if we can get the correct arrow. The only way to stop it is to block, but to no avail, and we give the checkmate. So obviously this setup is very dangerous, but for it to work, we are going to need g8 to be under wraps and g6. In this case, we have black pieces on this square, which works perfectly. We can also imagine a white pawn here taking this square. Let's imagine the king is somewhere else, so it isn't in check. Another situation could be a bishop, white bishop on this diagonal, and the diagonal being empty, and we take all these squares, these important ones. And that becomes especially important when we go back here. And this is usually how the pattern arrives on the board. We give a check on h6 and then a check on f8. So for that to work, like I said, we need this and this, but we also need f7 and f6 to be under wraps. Either a black piece or a white piece covering it. In this case, the black pieces are well in the way of each other, so this works out perfectly. So we're quite happy, and we play bishop to h6. So let's look at some examples, and I'm going to start with this one. I think I've had this a bunch of times in many of these chess tactics trainers online. And the setup is a queen sacrifice, which is always attractive. Queen takes h7, forcing move. Black has to take, and we go on with the forcing moves, rook h5. So for our pattern, we need the rook on the h file. Here it comes, king g7 and bishop h6. And guess what? Pieces on g8 and g6. This is under wraps, so bishop h6 is working. Followed by bishop to f8, mate. The deadly bishop on rook file discovery. Keep an eye on it. So this one, here black played the very unfortunate move, rook a to g8. And why is it unfortunate? Well, because now we have these pieces, we have this square under control, and we have this. So how do we take advantage? Well, it would be nice to land the bishop on h6 without the rook on h8. If we do the math, that's perfectly doable with queen to h6. Only one move, and now we have the desired setup, and now we have set up the deadly bishop discovery on the rook file, and the rook is there. So a checkmate. Of course, we can mirror it to the other side, as most things we can do in chess. So by now this should be rather simple. In this case, we don't have a piece here, but we do have the bishop, and the bishop keeps these two under wraps, and these squares are controlled. So we know what we need. We just need to set it up. If we do a check here, he can go to the corner. Actually, we could do that and then play the best move, but the best move is to take on a7. If it goes here, mate here. So it takes, and now the rook comes to the h file. Sorry, a file. We did mirror it, right? King to b7 and bishop to h6. And guess what? We've set up the deadly bishop on rook file discovery. And here it is, bishop c8. everything in place, we have the mate. We'll keep going. Very similar setup. Again, queen sacrifice, always a nice way to do this. Well, not really a queen sacrifice, more like a rook sacrifice. Rook takes h7, and guess what? Covered by the bishop, covered the bishop, under wraps, in the way. So king here, mate. Another example, and another unbelievable example of a very unfortunate rook move by black. Veronika Kiefhaber played rook to g8, intending, I guess, to set up some kind of an attack on the g-pawn. But unfortunately, the move f5 hits the bishop, and along with hitting the bishop, it takes care of the square g6. So the only thing missing is f7 being in the way, and instead of losing the piece, black played bishop f7, which is very unfortunate, and black resigned after bishop to h6. So you see, the mating pattern still applies in the endgame. Only one move. But okay, black resigned. She can only play here, and we give the check, and a checkmate. So these mating patterns can even help in the endgame. Yet another very unfortunate rook g8 move. It seems black is planning g6 to try to open up something against the white king. White was aware of that. He thought, okay, he wants to play g6. I am going to be ready. And he played rook to h1. And what did he play now? Well, you know it. We take on h7, setting up the rook on the h file, king on g7, everything in place. Boom, 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 boom. Bishop to h6, bishop on the rook file discovery is ready. Only queen h4 left and mate. So the final example will be for you to solve. And we'll just see a quick game from the start. It's English opening. We'll just go over it really quickly. And we see black closing the center here and going for a kingside attack. h6 and then f5. Closing things down. And from here, black would love to push these pawns. And he manages to do that. He plays knight f6, h5, wants to push the pawn. Queen d1, trying to hit this one, but black plays a6, and then queen to e8. Just setting up, not a long knight b5, but now the queen comes to b8, and from there we cover the h5 pawn. Why is this important? Well, because now we can push g5 without this being under attack. Queen g6, now we're ready to push g4. This is like a model game in how these attacks should be pushed for black. g4, bishop goes back, and white is basically losing here. First queen h5, threatening some evil stuff here. Rook here trying to defend, but after f3 we see that if the bishop retreats, it's going to be rook h8. So white sacrificed here. Bishop takes f3. So after queen takes f3, what's the finish? The finish is for you to find. How did black finish this game? Should be relatively easy for you after having looked at all these examples. Tell me the solution in the comments, and appreciate your time. Hope you enjoyed the video. It wouldn't hurt my feelings if you gave me a like, if you shared the video, if you want to help me to grow the channel. If not, so be it. See you next time. Bye bye.